For years, the world pictured Canada as a quiet northern postcard. Calm lakes, gentle hills, polite silence stretching across a frozen map. A place thought simple, predictable, softened by snow and distance. A country wrapped in stillness. But step into its true wilderness, and the story fractures. Mountains rise like ancient walls along the Rockies. Forests, older than memory, breathe in the Pacific rain. Icefields crack with the weight of time, and coastlines roar where storms meet cedar and stone. Nature here does not decorate, it commands, reshaping everything we think we know. Beneath this vastness, life moves in subtle rhythms. The low hum of wind brushing alpine pines, the crunch of frost under boots, the distant call of a loon drifting across dark water. The air carries a cold clarity, as if the land itself is awake. And in that breath, something wild returns. Canada, Untamed, a journey through the last great wilderness. Banff National Park. Here, the meaning of wilderness is reimagined as a sanctuary both ancient and alive. Pine forests sweep along turquoise lakes beneath the craggy spires of the Canadian Rockies, where the village of Banff nestles quietly into Alberta's mountain embrace. Established in the late 19th century as Canada's very first national park, its boundaries have expanded to protect over 2,500 square miles, or about 6,500 square kilometers, of soaring peaks and wild rivers. Walking beneath glaciers, one might feel time loosen, a sense of humility in the face of nature's vast, enduring patience. Light and shadow trade places upon the lakes, their mirrored waters both inviting and forbidding, as if beauty here is meant to be admired, not possessed. In every crisp breath, there is an invitation to remember how landscapes like these quietly shape our imaginations, far beyond the mountain's edge. Lake Louise, a glacial jewel set among the rugged peaks, Lake Louise reflects the core meaning of wild beauty and enduring tranquility. Emerald waters rest gently beneath the vast, snow-capped Rockies of Alberta, Canada, where sunlight scatters across the mirrored surface and alpine firs create a deep green border along the shore. Named in honor of Princess Louise Caroline Alberta, in the late 19th century, this lake stretches for more than half a mile, or nearly 1 full kilometer, and has long drawn visitors. First, the Stoney Nakoda peoples, who regarded the area as sacred, and later travelers riding the new Canadian Pacific Railway, seeking wonder in the West. Standing at this shoreline, you feel both insignificantly small and profoundly connected, as if the silence of the landscape both humbles and welcomes you. There is a contrast between the delicate clarity of these turquoise waters and the raw, harsh heights that tower above, where avalanches and silence coexist. In such places, we are quietly reminded of how nature's grandeur can both challenge and soothe the human spirit, inviting contemplation without ever needing a final answer. Jasper National Park. This vast sanctuary is a living testament to nature's quiet power, reminding us how wilderness both humbles and inspires those who wander its ancient trails. Framed by the rocky silhouettes of Alberta's Canadian Rockies, sunlight scatters across crystalline lakes, while forests of pine and spruce paint the horizon with deep, endless green. First established in the early 20th century, Jasper has protected more than 4,200 square miles, or nearly 11,000 square kilometers, since its founding, sheltering both grizzly bears and native cultures whose stories are woven into the land. There's a serene hush in the air here, as if each breeze carries echoes from a world far older than memory. And with wild rivers rushing beside quiet meadows and rugged peaks cradling soft fields of wildflowers, Jasper offers both majesty and intimacy, untamed yet profoundly welcoming. Its silence asks us where else in our world such sanctuary survives, and whether we are prepared to truly listen. Icefields Parkway, a ribbon of roadway stitching together the ancient heart of the Canadian Rockies. Stretching between the mountain towns of Jasper and Lake Louise in Alberta, Canada, the parkway reveals an endless procession of snow-capped peaks, turquoise lakes, and glaciers glowing beneath the high northern sun. Carved in the early 20th century, This scenic highway travels for more than 140 miles, or about 230 kilometers, tracing a path that was once the domain of migrating wildlife and indigenous peoples who first understood the land's raw rhythm. Driving here, there's a hush that settles in, a quiet awe as jagged cliffs and silent ice fields unfold on every side, stirring both humility and wonder. Along this passage, the presence of untouched wilderness sits in soft tension with the steady hum of travel, where fragile beauty and boundless freedom share the same space. In this vast and ever-changing landscape, each visitor becomes a brief part of a story that stretches far beyond the edge of the road. Yoho National Park. Here in this corner of the Canadian Rockies, nature's artistry finds both its wildest expression and its quietest refuge. Alpine lakes shimmer with hues of emerald and sapphire, while towering cliffs and dense pine forests surround the historic Kicking Horse Pass in British Columbia. Since its founding in the late 19th century, Yoho has preserved stories written in rock, from ancient fossils embedded in the Burgess Shale to the thundering rush of Niagara Falls, which drops over 1,250 feet, or nearly 380 meters. Standing among these mountains, you sense the gentle endurance and subtle awe that have drawn explorers and dreamers for generations. Here, wildness and fragility are twin spirits, as powerful river currents carve valleys that cradle the most delicate wildflowers. In Yoho's expanse, you can feel the unbroken connection, linking Earth's ancient past to every journey yet to begin. Emerald Lake. Stillness and color seem to pause time here, where the soul of the Canadian Rockies settles quietly beside the water. Amid towering pines and rugged peaks near Field, British Columbia, the lake glows an unforgettable shade of turquoise, as if lit from within, its surface reflecting the circling clouds and drift of mountain air. Formed thousands of years ago by retreating glaciers, Emerald Lake gathers its luminous hue from the fine glacial silt suspended in its chilly depths, and has welcomed explorers since its discovery in the late 19th century by Tom Wilson, drawn here by the calling of local guides. There is a quiet awe in standing at the edge, reminded of both the strength and the serenity carved by nature's long patience. In winter, the landscape transforms. Beneath the icy hush is the memory of summer green, a gentle contradiction held year after year. In this sanctuary where time and elements slowly intertwine, you might ponder how beauty, fragile yet enduring, shapes all places we call extraordinary. Whistler Mountain, a summit where adventure and tranquility share the same sky. Rising above the alpine village of Whistler, in British Columbia, Canada, its snow-draped slopes unfurl in sweeping white vistas, while evergreen forests stretch far below and clouds gather like soft veils against the jagged ridges. Long before it became a global destination for winter sports enthusiasts, this mountain was a gathering place for the indigenous Squamish and Lil'wat peoples, who knew it by names that speak of black bears and sacred spirits, and whose traditional trails still shape the land today. Standing amidst the hush of falling snow or the summer hush of wildflower meadows, visitors can sense how both exhilaration and deep calm coexist on the same steep terrain. Here, the thrill of racing down more than 5,000 feet, about 1,500 meters, contrasts softly with the silent watchfulness of the ancient peaks, holding memories of both celebration and solitude. In this ever-changing alpine heart, Whistler Mountain reminds us that every landscape holds more than one story, waiting for each traveler to listen. Garibaldi Provincial Park, a wilderness sanctuary where volcanic giants shape both the land and the spirit. Beneath the jagged black peaks and across the turquoise sweep of Garibaldi Lake, dense forests echo with the scent of pine and the cool breath of glacier melt, all just beyond the bustle of Vancouver, Canada. Since its creation in 1927, more than 195,000 acres, about 79,000 hectares, have been protected here, preserving the thunderous streams, alpine meadows, and the sleeping cone of Mount Garibaldi for all who pass through. Standing at the lake's edge, a quiet awe settles in, shaped by eons of ice and fire and the long patience of the wild. Here, fragility and endurance sit side by side, lush meadows flowering for only short weeks under the shadow of ancient rock. In places like this, we are reminded of the delicate balance on which all landscapes rest, and the stories nature continues to write long after human footsteps fade. Vancouver Seawall. Here, movement becomes meditation, as the world's longest uninterrupted waterfront path invites both locals and travelers to find balance between city and sea. Curving gently along the edges of Vancouver, Canada, The seawall's smooth path hugs the glittering waters of English Bay while offering glimpses of skyline, forested Stanley Park, and distant snow-tipped mountains, all united by the salty freshness of Pacific air. Constructed piece by piece since the early 1900s to protect the park's fragile shoreline, the seawall now stretches for more than 13 miles, or about 21 kilometers, serving as a testament to the city's enduring relationship with its natural surroundings. As footsteps blend with bicycle wheels and laughter drifts from grassy picnics, the seawall becomes not just a border, but a common ground, where each journey is uniquely personal, yet quietly shared. There is a gentle duality here, the tranquil certainty of stone meeting the ever-changing tides, urban energy surrendering to wild beauty at the waterfront's margin. In this confluence of rhythm and reflection, we are reminded that the boundaries we create can sometimes be places where connection finds its fullest voice. Pacific Rim National Park. On the edge of land and ocean, this wild stretch of British Columbia speaks of both resilience and renewal. Standing along the mist-laced shores near Tofino, Canada, visitors watch as silver-gray waves crash endlessly against rain-drenched forests, the air thick with the fragrance of cedar and salt. Established in 1970, the park protects more than 125 square miles, or about 325 square kilometers, of rare old-growth temperate rainforest, pristine beaches, and rocky outcrops, home for First Nations for thousands of years before modern explorers ever arrived. Here, it's easy to feel both exposed and sheltered as storm winds howl above while moss quiets every footstep below. The park exists where fierce Pacific tides meet ancient forest calm, a meeting place for life shaped by cycles of destruction and regrowth. Each visitor leaves with the sense that nature's silent conversation carries forward, waiting for those willing to listen. Haida Gwaii, an archipelago where land and spirit are inseparable. Haida Gwaii speaks to resilience shaped by ocean winds and ancestral memory. Mist drapes the immense cedars and silent beaches near the northwestern edge of British Columbia, Canada, where silver light flickers between ancient tree trunks and tide-carved stones. Once known as the Queen Charlotte Islands, these islands have endured for thousands of years as the heartland of the Haida Nation, whose villages, longhouses, and monumental totem poles reveal a legacy interwoven with sea, salmon, and red cedar. Here, every rainfall seems to echo the quiet persistence of a people who survived cultural storms, their songs still carried by the wind. The islands offer both harsh isolation and rich community, a place where the ocean's vastness can feel both daunting and protective at the same time. Across shifting tides and endless forest, the meaning of home, enduring, fragile, and shared, rises quietly, reminding us how every shore holds its own story. Great Bear Rainforest, a living cathedral of old-growth trees where the wild spirit of British Columbia lingers in every drop of rain. Soft mist drapes the emerald canopy along Canada's rugged Pacific coast, where silent rivers carve through moss-laden galleries and ancient cedars tower more than 250 feet high, or nearly 80 meters above the forest floor. This vast sanctuary has survived thousands of years, sheltering the elusive white spirit bear and sustaining First Nations cultures, whose stories are entwined with these whispering woods. Walking here stirs a gentle awe, the sense of sharing space with creatures seen and unseen, past and present. Yet, while the forest exudes timeless tranquility, it also bears the scars of contested land and shifting climate, its resilience quietly tested. In these green shadows, the question lingers: how will our choices shape the fate of ancient places still woven into the fabric of the earth? Okanagan Valley, a place where time appears to stretch softly between land and water. The Okanagan Valley in British Columbia offers a living mosaic of abundance and renewal. Gentle rows of vineyards and orchards cascade down sunlit slopes toward the shimmering expanse of Okanagan Lake, while the fragrant air carries hints of pine and ripe fruit. Once home to the Syilx people for thousands of years, this valley quietly witnessed the transformation from indigenous gathering grounds to one of Canada's most celebrated wine regions, a journey intertwined with both resilience and change. Standing beside a tranquil field or gazing across those glassy waters, it's impossible not to feel a subtle kinship with generations who have called this fertile place home. Here, the harmony between human cultivation and wild landscape is never quite complete. Summer's warmth is always edged by the sharp memory of long, cold winters. In the gentle rhythm of the valley, we're reminded how every harvest, every sunset over the water connects us to a much larger story of adaptation and hope. Niagara Falls, a living border of water and wonder. Niagara Falls stands as both a spectacle of nature's raw strength and a symbol of shared boundaries. Mist rises endlessly above the thundering curve where the Niagara River plunges over sheer cliffs on the edge of Ontario, Canada, catching sunlight to paint fleeting rainbows across a deafening, silvery curtain. For thousands of years, these cascades have shaped trade routes and spiritual legends. Then, in the early 19th century, they became a magnet for industry and the world's first hydroelectric ambitions, the largest drop measuring over 160 feet, or nearly 50 meters. Standing near the brink, you feel the ancient pulse that connects distant generations, a reminder of both vulnerability and awe in the face of unstoppable flow. Here, The relentless power of water lives side by side with fragile human attempts to understand and harness it. The falls continue onward, neither belonging to one nation nor yielding to time, inviting all who witness them to consider the world's constant renewal. Algonquin Provincial Park, a wild sanctuary where the rhythm of nature sets the pace. Algonquin stands as a living reminder of Canada's deep-rooted connection to wilderness. Sunlight drifts through towering pines and birches, casting dappled reflections on the countless lakes and silent bogs that shape the heart of Ontario. Established in 1893, Algonquin is one of North America's oldest provincial parks, spanning nearly 3,000 square miles, or over 7,700 square kilometers, and safeguarding both fragile ecosystems and the stories of its First Nations peoples. Each breath of its cool morning air carries an invitation to lose oneself in stillness, where the distant call of a loon layers nostalgia over every ripple. Here, the promise of adventure coexists with a profound, almost melancholic peace, as visitors paddle tranquil routes once traveled by fur traders. In a world that too often rushes forward, Algonquin stirs a quiet question. What does it mean truly to belong to the land? Bruce Peninsula National Park, a wild sanctuary where the landscape's ancient rhythms still echo. The meaning of endurance lingers on every stone and ripple. dawn here in Ontario, Canada unfurls over sheer limestone cliffs and dense evergreen forests, with the crystalline waters of Georgian Bay shimmering in the hush, inviting eyes to trace the rugged coastline stretching for more than 9 miles, or about 15 kilometers. Formed over hundreds of millions of years, these dramatic escarpments are part of the Niagara Escarpment, a UNESCO World Biosphere and silent witness to the slow sculpting of glaciers and the footsteps of the Saugeen Ojibwe peoples. To stand on these ancient rocks is to feel both sheltered by time and exposed to the sway of wind and water, a gentle reminder of our place in a vast, intricate world. Here, vibrant orchids bloom beside twisted cedars, wild solitude balanced with the quiet footprints of travelers, and the deep silence is broken only by the distant call of loons. Even as we leave, Bruce Peninsula's spirit lingers, inviting us all to consider the patient, quiet power that shapes not only land, but inner landscapes too. Thousand Islands, a watery labyrinth where land and river blur into a constellation of possibility. Sunlight catches on the gleaming surface of the St. Lawrence River, casting a mosaic of light between rocky islets and pine-draped shores in Ontario, Canada. Over 10,000 years ago, these islands began to emerge as glaciers withdrew. But it was not until the late 19th century that the area became a coveted summer retreat for the elite, layering mansions and boathouses atop ancient granite. Drifting between their shadows, you may feel both awe and humility, a reminder of nature's quiet grandeur and the impermanence of human imprints. There is a gentle tension here, as leisure and wildness, permanence and change endlessly interweave. Perhaps every hidden harbor among these islands invites us to reconsider where borders and belonging truly begin. Montreal Old Port, the heart of adventure and memory along the St. Lawrence River. Cobblestone streets wind beneath tall maples, while the gentle glow of lamps reflects on centuries-old warehouses in the city of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Established in the early 1700s, this port once bustled with ships and merchants, anchoring the town's economic rise for more than 300 years and stretching over 2 kilometers, or about 1.25 miles, of riverfront. Today, laughter floats from busy cafes and families stroll, where dockers once toiled, blending nostalgia with new life. Summer warmth and winter ice skating bring opposite rhythms, where history endures, but time always moves. Here, every step connects past and present, inviting you to wonder at how cities around the world carry their own stories by the water's edge. Gros Morne. Here, the story of the earth is written in stone and silence, reminding us how landscapes shape destinies. In western Newfoundland, Canada, wind sweeps across ancient fjords and glacier-carved cliffs, while moody clouds cast shifting shadows over mossy tundra and deep sapphire lakes. This park's tablelands are one of the few places where the Earth's mantle rises above ground, a geological rarity formed over hundreds of millions of years as tectonic plates collided and parted, a visible testament to the planet's restless creativity. Walking along its rugged trails, there's a quiet awe, a feeling of standing both at the edge of time and inside a living classroom. Fogo Island, an island that quietly balances resilience and remoteness. Fogo Island invites you to the eastern edge of Canada, where the Atlantic's raw spirit shapes everyday life. Colorful clapboard houses cluster along rugged shorelines in Newfoundland and Labrador, their weathered faces facing winds that sweep over rocky inlets and fields of purple wildflowers, with the sea stretching endlessly beyond. Settled by European fishermen in the early 1700s, Fogo's communities grew from cod and kelp, enduring centuries of hardship and cultural blending. And today, the island has become a beacon for both traditional outport life and bold contemporary art, thanks to its innovative residency programs. There's a quiet pride woven into each salt-kissed surface, a belonging rooted not just in survival, but in creativity sparked by solitude. The stillness of the open water stands in gentle contrast to the warmth of small gatherings inside weather-beaten kitchens, bridging isolation with a sense of shared story. In places like Fogo Island, you can't help but wonder what it takes for a community and the human spirit to endure and transform at the world's outer edge. Cape Breton Highlands, the meeting point of land and sea. This rugged park embodies nature's quiet strength and the enduring spirit of Nova Scotia. Rolling hills unfurl into endless spruce forests, while sheer cliffs drop hundreds of feet, over 100 meters, into the restless Atlantic below, where cool mist catches the sunlight and distant cries of seabirds echo above wild, empty beaches. Since its founding in 1936, Cape Breton Highlands National Park has protected more than 380 square miles, or nearly 1,000 square kilometers, of some of Canada's oldest landscapes, once shaped by glaciers and home for centuries to Mi'kmaq peoples and Acadian settlers. Walking the narrow Cabot Trail, there's a feeling of both isolation and connection, a sense that the boundaries between earth, water, and sky are softer here. The park shifts quietly between seasons, where dense summer greens give way to blazing red autumn and then to the silence of snow, reminding visitors that wild places can hold both fierce beauty and a gentle, persistent welcome. In such places, the journey itself becomes part of a larger story, where the world's edges seem made for both reflection and discovery. Cabot Trail, a ribbon of road where land and sea are always in conversation. The Cabot Trail embodies the restless spirit of Nova Scotia's coast. Winding through windswept highlands and hugging rugged cliffs, this trail offers sweeping vistas of crimson forests in autumn and endless Atlantic blue, with the salty scent of the ocean drifting over the iconic route's overlook points in northern Canada. Completed in 1932, the Cabot Trail stretches nearly 185 miles, or just under 300 kilometers, originally designed to unite isolated fishing villages and spark new opportunities after years of economic hardship. There is a quiet humility here, as every curve reveals both grandeur and seclusion. Travelers often feel a gentle invitation to slow down, simply absorbing the shifting clouds and changing light. Wildness and welcome intertwine. Jagged cliffs lie beside cozy inns. Celtic fiddles echo next to silent coves. And as the road bends onward, each journey along it becomes a personal voyage, suggesting that discovery of place or self rarely ends at the water's edge. Peggy's Cove coastline. Here at the edge of Nova Scotia, the coastline stands as a silent dialogue between land and the vast Atlantic, embodying resilience against nature's quiet power. Granite boulders, smoothed by centuries of salt and wind, stretch toward the horizon, where waves burst white against the shore beneath the iconic lighthouse that watches over the small fishing community. Since its founding in the early 19th century, Peggy's Cove has been both a beacon for sailors and a humble home for generations. Its rugged cliffs enduring countless storms, yet refusing to yield to time's slow erosion. There's a deep solitude here, lonely yet comforting, as you listen to the wind and distant gulls, feeling both exposed and embraced by the ocean. Life here is shaped by contrasts. Fierce weather and gentle mornings, endless horizons and intimate village life. The precariousness of nature alongside the warmth of human tenacity. Prince Edward Island National Park. On this narrow stretch of protected coastline, nature's resilience and subtle beauty reveal the enduring relationship between land and sea. Rolling red sandstone cliffs and sweeping golden dunes frame the northern shores of Prince Edward Island, Canada, while wild grasses sway in the Atlantic breeze and the air carries the tang of salt and pine. Established in the early 1930s, the park preserves more than 13 miles, or about 21 kilometers, of habitat where fragile ecosystems shelter piping plovers and foxes, delicate balances shaped by centuries of wind, water, and human care. Walking the silent trails, you feel both sheltered and exposed, a guest in a living gallery shaped by change and constancy. Churchill Polar Bear Region. Here, the wild edges of northern Manitoba are defined by a single, powerful truth: coexistence between human life and the vast rhythm of nature. Windswept tundra stretches beneath wide-open skies on the edge of Hudson Bay, where clusters of sturdy buildings make up the small town of Churchill, and silent white forms prowl the ice beyond. Polar bears whose presence lingers in the crisp, salt-tinged air. Each autumn, as the temperatures drop, this region transforms into the world's most accessible place to observe polar bears in their natural habitat, a migration shaped by generations of adaptation and challenge. Standing at the crossroads of wilderness and home, there's a deep humility, a reminder that even in one of Canada's remotest corners, humanity is shaped and humbled by forces far older and larger than itself. Here, life is both fragile and fierce, a stark border where survival and beauty come hand in hand. Perhaps it is in places like Churchill that we are gently asked to remember our place within the wider story of the world, where every encounter is both a privilege and a responsibility. Riding Mountain, a sanctuary where wild prairie and silent boreal forest hold each other in quiet embrace. Gentle morning light falls across vast grasslands and peaceful lakes, where the calls of loons echo over the still waters and deer move softly beneath the towering spruces of western Manitoba, Canada. Established in 1929, this national park protects nearly 1,100 square miles, or about 2,800 square kilometers, of diverse wilderness, once home to the indigenous Anishinaabe, who shaped and honored these lands long before settlers called it theirs. Here, solitude arrives like a kind companion, inviting you to listen for the slow rhythms of the natural world. It is a place shaped by the delicate balance of prairie openness and dense woodland shelter, where each season transforms the land yet leaves its spirit unchanged. In such quiet places, even the most distant traveler may find echoes of belonging, reminders that every landscape, no matter how remote, touches the ongoing story of us all.